standby force. I had to wait for 53 years for the idea to be put into practice. When I was at the university in 1961, I heard of the clear call, the prophetic call of Kwame Nkrumah, who in 1961 called for a Pan-African military force. He, in fact, envisaged at that time that there would be a high command with Navy, Air Force, and the military for the whole of Africa. The purpose, the objective, was one, to defend any threat on the African continent, and secondly, for that force to be engaged in the liberation of the continent as a whole, where the countries or the people of Africa was still under the colonial rule. 53 years ago. So I want to thank you for having struggled. It's taken long, but thank God it is now there. Secondly, this is indeed a day of peace. And we are celebrating this day in these regions of Eastern Africa. But in my heart, I cannot celebrate or rejoice for this day, because my region has never known peace since 1952. There is not a single day, and I'm just taking 52 October, that was when the governor declared a state of emergency in Kenya with the beginning of Mau Mau. From that time up to today, there isn't a single day we can say the guns have been silent in all those countries which are members of the East African Standby Force, including others which are not, like Eritrea. That is awesome. That shakes you to realize that we have been at each other's throat for all those years. 52 was the Mau Mau rebellion. 56, the beginning of the rebellion in Sudan, which lasted up to 71. While that was going on, the Eritreans launched theirs against Ethiopia in 1960. That went on up to 1991. Then there were Ugandans that started. And then Sudan again in 1983. That went on up to 2005. And it's not over. This is our region. The region that has been devastated by conflicts. This is where you are. And you are waiting to intervene when you should be intervening as of now. Because problems are still there. Third thing as characteristic we have seen is the length of this conflict, as I'm just relating it to you, that has been going on. The other point that I want to raise here is all countries except Mauritius, but Mauritius is not even a member of the East African Standby Force. But all the members that you have listed here have had conflicts of one kind or another, either internally, within themselves, like Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda with genocide, Burundi with genocide, we can include that, Comoros, Kenya, internal problems and conflict. Somali, where the state doesn't exist up to now. Ethiopia, 30 years of war that has been going on and is not finished. Djibouti has their own internal problems. That is our region. Fourth factor, characteristic we need to take into account with, is because of all these tensions and so on, these regions have known coups. And I'll just go through the list. Sudan, first of all, in 1958, the first coup, when Aboud was overthrown. Uganda have had their shares of coups when Obote was overthrown. First of all, when Kabaka was overthrown, Obote was overthrown, Obote was overthrown, Okel was overthrown, and Museveni is in power. That is our region. Ethiopia had their coups, starting with the arrest of Haile Selassie, and then he was killed. 3 leaders took over power, and then one by one they eliminate one another, and one was left. So Ethiopia have assassinated 3 heads of state. So we have also assassination in our region. Somali assassinated their prime minister. This is our region. To say nothing of Burundi, I think there are 3 or 4 who have gone. Rwanda, similarly. So I'm painting this picture, remembering that this day is an important day of peace. But I'm just putting it to you that you have so much to do. Coups have taken place in all of these, Seychelles, Ethiopia, all of these, they have taken place. Another characteristic which we have noted in the region is the longevity of the heads of state remaining in power, apart from a few places. Starting with Sudan, Bashir took over in 1988. First of all, he started with Uganda. Museveni from 86, he is still sitting in that chair, and likely he is going to continue for a few more years. Bashir has been there from 88, he was re-elected, and likely he will go through elections soon. Rwanda have done, I think, 14 from 1994. Now they have changed the constitution to open it up. So it's an open-ended. How long it's going to go on, I can't tell. Ethiopia, if Meles was there, likelihood it will still be there from 1991. Let us also include Eritrea. From 1991, no constitution, no elections up to this day. The other characteristic, apart from Kenya, there has not been change, transition, peaceful transition from one government to the other. Either a coup or some other forms of force. So that is the context that I think we need to place ourselves. I believe military don't just go in and intervene without having a global picture as to what is really going on and what are the threats. So the first threat is the instability given the history of what I have given you. That already is a threat. When you realize that there has not been any elections in Eritrea for all these years, you realize that is a threat already, that you should be prepared and knowing what could come ahead of you. Although that was enough, the region has potential threats that could destabilize and could cause conflict. And I just want to go through, and I think this is what you need the students who are here, you need to do more research in depth into some of these problems that are not yet resolved. One are the unresolved border disputes, starting with Ethiopia and Eritrea. They went to war, thousands of people died from that war. They went to Algeria, they negotiated, the decision was made, Padme, which was being contested, was given to Eritrea, decided. But the demarcation of the borders have not been done up to today. Two, Eritrea and Djibouti. Eritrea moved in, crossed over, claiming some part. There were negotiations in Qatar. I think it is just suspended. It's never been resolved. Three, Southern Sudan are beginning to complain and murmur quietly about the Elemi Triangle. And that's a disputed region as far as South Sudanese are concerned. They may take it to arbitration, they may not. At the moment, they have more problems internally to try and confront Kenya on this problem of Elemi Triangle. It's not resolved. Fourthly is Sudan and South Sudan. As part of the comprehensive peace agreement, the demarcation of the North and the South should have been done. But so far, it has not been done. We don't know whether this could be a point of tension and a point of problems in the coming years. But even in these countries, internally, even within, ethnic groups have problems of borders as well. Once they have sorted out the external borders, there are going to be internal problems in most all of them as to how far, where are we, and how far do we go. I have raised these issues of the unresolved problems, at least of the borders. But there are other issues as well that have not been resolved. The comprehensive peace agreement for Sudan, the referendum that should have taken place in Abyei has not taken place. It's hanging there, and the likelihood of it being done sooner seems to me to be far removed at the moment. Are we going to see the similar situation as we saw in Western Sahara, where the decision was made to carry out a referendum for people to decide where they want to be, and it has remained hanging? And if it does, and if it is not, could this become another source of conflict in the future? It's not been resolved, it's still there, that particular problem. Conflict is still going on in Darfur, in Sudan. You have also the problem, the people should have been consulted in Nuba Mountain, South Blue Nile, and so forth. It has not been done. These are still problems that have to be dealt with. Here in Kenya, it seems that I'm giving a picture that there isn't much of a problem, but I was in this hotel here trying to deal with the issues of the 2007. Since the introduction of multi-party elections, elections have never been accepted as being free and fair. It's been most of the time contested. And as you know, first time in 2007, there was an actual conflict. In 2013, the matter went to court. So we have not been able to sort out that problem. But there is also quietly within the body politics what is termed as tyranny of numbers. And Kenya has to face it. Somehow, we have to deal with it. Either we accept it as it is, and we accept democracy and say, this is what it is, and we go ahead with it, or we say to ourselves, how do we handle the relationship between the various communities in Kenya? I'm not listing everything, but we know that this is there disturbing the system, is not going as smoothly as we want. Our ethnic differences that exist. Lastly, the region is faced now with a much more serious threat. I hope it will not last for too long, but there is the religious dimension with fundamentalism that has come into this region through Al-Shabaab in Somalia. That is a much more serious threat, and it's a threat for all of us. It's no one will escape. But of course, the stability of Somalia is also of vital importance, that state to remain and to be together. Let me just finish also, just as part of the characteristic of this region, is how we, as a region, there are parts that have seceded. Sudan is one, Southern Sudan. You have also Somalia, and you have Eritrea. These, instead of being together, they decided to fall apart and form their own government. Let me read you, I've just picked up a book here, and that is the ideological, theological thrust, which I think we need to grapple with for the coming years. I just picked up a book here by Charles Allen, God's Terrorist. And this is what he says. And this is quoting a statement by Theodore Pennell, and he wrote this in Afghan Frontier in 1909. And it's a message that can echo today. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the prophet of Allah. This is the statement, the core of the Muslim. Such is the cry which electrifies 250 million inhabitants of this globe. That's the number, the total number then estimated of Muslims in the world. Such is a cry which thrills them so that they are ready to go forward and fight for their religion and consider it a short road to paradise, to kill Christians and Hindus and unbelievers. It is that cry which at the present time is echoing and re-echoing through the hill and mountain fastnets of the northwestern frontier of India. It is that cry which the mullah of Afghanistan are now carrying to mountains, hamlets, and to towns in Afghanistan in order to raise the people of that country to come forward and fight. That is a cry which has the power of joining together the members of Islam throughout the world and preparing them for conflict with all who are not ready to accept their religion. And it is especially these Mohammedans to the northwestern frontier of India who have this intense religious zeal. Call it what you will, fanatism or bigotry, but which nevertheless is a power within them overruling every passion. Now, I read this, but remember, those who are the extremists are not only targeting, if one was to edit, it's not just targeting Christians and Hindus and others, but even the Muslims who do not agree with their theology. So all of us together in this world, and in this region we have seen what it is. It is a task that you have to undertake and to understand and to see what is the best way to deal with it. Let me finish by making a few recommendations, a few thoughts, just throwing some of that thought in my mind. Number one, I think it will be important for the standby force, as they are, I believe they have a research team, to have this comprehensive picture, to see where we have come from, what has gone on, to do an evaluation. Have we been successful in our intervention? For example, when we had the peace process here for Somalia, what went wrong? What could we have done better? For the Sudan, what is it that we didn't do? An in-depth, objective evaluation. If it has been done, bring it together, draw out policies that we can pursue to improve our intervention in this system. That is number one. Number two is I see that you have a number of pillars for intervention. There is one which I think is very important, maybe two, I would have called it a standby diplomatic team to move in when there is a crisis. The ideal, the success of this standby force is when the force is not engaged, employed at all. That is the success. It's not when you are engaged. We have failed. Those of us who are in the front line have failed. You are there as the last resort. And for me, therefore, the success is that you will not be called to intervene, but that efforts are made beforehand to enable you not to come. So in order to do that, what we need is, I think, a team that can intervene diplomatically, if you like, a standby peace-making team, which do not wait. And by the way, that is the biggest problem in our region. Problems arise, and we don't know who. There is no mechanism to trigger as to who should intervene. And I remember the example even here in Kenya in 2007. There I was, 2007, 2008. I was in my house, watching the news. And yeah, I'm looking at what's happening. Announcement of the results. Tension was rising. And it was somebody who called me and said, "What are you doing?" It was my son actually who called me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm watching the news." He said, "No, you are watching the news, but the country is burning." I said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" He said, "You and some of you can get out. You need to do something." So I said, "Now, how do I do it?" He said, "He had talked to somebody, and that person talked to me. He was from the nation, and so he called me and asked me, 'Can you come to the studio? I live in Kigiri. Situation is burning in the town.' So I wondered how I'm thinking of my own security and safety. I'm a little bit a coward. You know, you have to be coward to survive. You're not courageous. You have to be coward sometimes to survive. So I wasn't sure, but I wanted to come. My heart wanted to come. So I told my wife, I've been called to go to the Nation House in town. He said, "Are you out of your mind? How can you go?" So I rang the person at Nation and said, "Look, I cannot come. My wife might have a heart attack as I'm going." So I got outside. These mobile phones are wonderful. So I rang and we talked. And we conspired together. I said, "Listen, why don't you tell her I am coming? And I will come to the house and accompany you." So I went inside, charmingly, with a courageous face, and said, "Mama, don't worry. This gentleman is coming, maybe with other people, and they will accompany me and protect me up to the Nation House." So he said, "Okay." So I locked the door, make sure she doesn't come out. So the person arrived with his car. He got into his car, I got into mine, and of course there was no protection. And we arrived at Nation House. But on the way, I called a number of other people who, together, we went to the Nation House. And we started getting involved, intervening with what we said. We spoke, we appealed, we cried, we called upon the youth not to get out onto the street. But that was not enough. I went back home, I said, so what? I called some elders, they came to my house, we tried to get in touch with the various parties, and they left. Then I asked myself, now what next? So I called the same people, 4 or 5 of us, can we meet at Serena? And we came here. And that was the beginning for a group that met here for 40 days called Concerned Citizen for Peace. So I have a lot of sentiment about this place. This place, there was so much that happened. We were able to intervene, talk to people, organize meeting behind the scenes, put people in touch with one another, wrote note papers and so forth. So we made a little contribution. But all I'm saying is, what is it that triggered that intervention? Diplomatic intervention. We don't have that mechanism to move in. I've just been in Burundi, and there since January. We are going there every 2 weeks with a team from East Africa and COMESA, trying to do prevention, which was excellent from January. But we see the situation is deteriorating. The president was determined to go ahead with the 3rd term. 24th of May, when the elections were taken, 25th, we all left. And there have been assassination, there have been this, there have been so going on. I met with the president of Uganda 2 weeks ago, and I say, Your Excellency, you had started a dialogue. Are you going back? He said, wait for me, we'll call. There was an attempt on the head of military. My greatest worry is we are watching the situation. And who knows what could happen tomorrow. So we do need a team that doesn't wait, sees the situation, moves in. Number 2 recommendation is, in all of this, in my experience, involvement, seeing countries in conflict, can we think of an arbitration team, a commission that is there, respected by the community as a whole, is the first point of call when you have conflict, like the case in Southern Sudan, what has happened. Instead of taking up arms, getting angry, starting to fight, they could have gone to that arbitration and say, listen, Riek could have said, why has President Bashir Garang has done this and this? That team would listen, say, now you come, let's hear you, let's hear this side, what has happened. A team, experts will go in there intelligent. So all I'm appealing is, in your task, and I was seeing it here in Kenya here, I say, frontline are those who engage, civil society, diplomats. Second line is the courts and arbitration team. Third, the last is you, is the intervening force. You are the last. You should not even be involved. We should be there at the front. That's all I wanted to share with you. So I'm sorry if I caused you to lose your appetite, but we'll ask for you to get a glass of wine to unwind yourself. I hope I don't give you nightmares, but I do have nightmares about our region. Thank you.
Mr. Benedict.